You do not need a bigger following to have more community. You may feel like you have good reach, but you don't have the revenue or you don't have the results that match that reach. That is a core sign that you are someone who has audience but not community. Sarah has community and you don't. So it means when two people have a deciding factor of who they're going to invest from, they're going to invest with the person they have more connection with, i.e. that they feel a deeper sense of community to. A big following is an audience that watches you. A community is a collective group of people who move because you're leading them of where you want them to go. How many of them would still find a way to connect with you if you disappeared tomorrow? That number is your true community size. Hello and welcome back to Ambitious. Today we are talking all things in the difference of what it actually looks like in today's current market to actually build community. And no, we are not talking about audience, meaning more followers, having just larger groups of people. I'm talking about those ride or die fans, the people who are what some might kind of consider or coin the term as the cult-like brand. If you are somebody who feels like you want to learn how to really create that raving fan base of community members and not just feel like you have a sitting audience full of people, then today's episode is going to be for you. This is something that I think is really important, especially today, because many people who've been in business for many years have thousands of followers. You have people that are watching you, people who are consuming you, but there may be even just people who are DMing you and loving your content and engaging with you. But there is this feeling of the fact that we have people surrounding us, but who are not necessarily actively part of our community, i.e. we feel like we have an audience, but we don't necessarily have community. And so many of us struggle to understand what is the difference, right? Like when I talk to business owners, they say, I feel like I've got 7,000 followers. I've got 6,000 people in this community. I have sometimes, which I've also seen, 200 or 300,000 people in an audience. And yet they feel like they have no community. Why is that? And so we're going to go over a couple different things today. Number one, why this is so important in today's current online marketing ecosystem. So if you are someone who, like myself, has seen a surge of AI, you've seen content seems to be going out at more volume and more rapid rates, you're probably seeing a lot of things shift and you're wondering, how do I really kind of carve out my corner of the market? Then this is why we're talking about this, because this is something everybody is seeing in today's current market. So we're going to talk about why this is important right now. And I'm going to actually share some pretty alarming stats of the impact of you building or not building community and what that actually looks like as an impact on your business. We're going to talk about ways to actually know that you are somebody who needs more community and the true definition between what a community looks like online versus what an audience actually looks like. And where, truthfully, when people are looking to make more community and have a more engaged group of people around their brand, the kind of go-to, core mistakes that everybody is making, which could be costing you community. And most importantly, you know that I always want to leave you with a framework. And so today I'm actually going to be going over a 7P framework, which literally breaks down in detail all the different Ps that you need to focus on if you are someone who wants to build an incredible community. So without further ado, let's get into it. So one of the first things we need to recognize is that if you are someone who feels like you're trying to understand what community is, and this is something that's a pretty broad word. I was actually talking to somebody about a week ago, and they were talking about community in the context to the product-based businesses that they help. And we were talking about the fact the word community is so interpretive, right? And many of us are seeing that we might think community is more reach, but we feel like we have reach, but we don't really have revenue that correlates to that. Maybe you feel like you have followers, so you have this audience of people that are technically following you, i.e. they've chosen to be here to want to hear what it is that you have to say and what it is you have to share, but yet you feel like they're not necessarily like loyal fans. You've got people watching and technically they're following, but they're not diehard fans of you and your brand. Or you feel like you've just got an audience. You've got people who are sitting there. And I want to tell you that, the difference between the person who is making, 50, 100K months from their audience, regardless of size, by the way, this is not relative to more equals more community, i.e., more followers, more reach, more visibility equals more community. I would actually say that I know people who have huge audiences who have zero community, even though they have large audience. And that's why I want to talk about this, because the true thing that's going to impact your business in the sense of revenue, brand growth, is not just the fact that, generally speaking, people have seen your stuff. It's a matter of that they're loyal to you and to your brand and what it is that you stand for. So the difference between the people that are doing those, 50, 100K, 150K months is the fact that those people are making their audience feel something. They're making their audience stand for something. They are mastering the 7 Ps that we're going to go through today. And they have created an ecosystem that people actually want to belong to, not just consume from. And this is, to me, especially in this time in marketing, in brand, it's more important than ever, because you, even yourself, may feel like you're saving videos of a TikTok online or an Instagram post that you see. If you asked yourself, who are the last 10 people that you saved videos of? Do you know their name? Do you know what they stand for, against, buzzwords of their brand, what it is that they offer, what it means to be part of their community? And if you don't, it means, let's just say, out of the last 10 videos you've saved, you can only answer that for 2 of the people. What that means is that the other 8 of the 10 that you have saved are people that you saved videos of strictly based off the fact that you found it, okay, great, information, save that for later. But there wasn't connection that was connected to that value, meaning you're not looking to come back and binge that person's brand. You just saved a quick inspo for a reel or a quick recipe that you want to make later. And you don't really have any brand loyalty. So this is where we want to make sure that you and your marketing, your content, your brand are not part of those 8. We want to make sure you're part of the 2. The 2 that people say, oh, that's Kate's video. I'm saving that and I'm coming back to it. Or that's Sarah's carousel. I love her stuff. I want to make sure I save this because she's always got great blank. So this is where we're going to make sure that you're part of the group that actually is someone who has community, not just audience. So you and I know that the online space right now, in any aspect of online marketing, has literally never been louder. Okay. There is the ability to make content at scale, meaning that AI is helping people to take what used to be 5 posts a week and easily generate that into 15 with the help of editing, design, captions, like you name it. It has literally never been easier to produce masses of marketing. So we're in a market where volume is at an all-time high. The other thing is that also everyone and their mom these days has a platform. So because of that, when anybody else can have an audience, it means that the true leverage now is not just having a following. It's not just having an audience, because everybody has one. And also, when we think about followers, think about people that maybe started on TikTok in the boom of when it was being created and now have these huge audiences, sometimes, 10, 20, 30, 40,000 followers. Well, followers to us now don't mean anything when it comes to credibility because so many people have them. So the question becomes, if we're in this era where there's tons of content, tons of people, tons of large audiences, how do we know who's for us? How do we know who we stick with? And that simple answer is connection, which is what's going to be the underbelly of you creating community. So I want to kind of think about, if you're listening and you're thinking, okay, do I have community? Like, I don't really know if I have community. I want to list out some different things that you can kind of use as almost an auditing tool for yourself to say, do I feel like I have audience or do I feel like I have community? So one of the things that a lot of people will see when they're frustrated with their community, or when they basically discover they don't have community and they have audience, is that you may feel like you have good reach, but you don't have either the revenue or you don't have the results that match that reach. So if you are someone who feels like you've got, people who are following you, people opening your emails, your content is getting engagement, but it seems like when you put out something to your audience, you don't really get a lot of bites. You don't get a lot of movement. You don't get a lot of energy around something. You don't get a lot of sales from the things that you put out. You kind of feel like you're talking into the ether. That is a core sign that you are someone who has audience, but not community. And it's really frustrating because, especially for people who have felt like they've been building this audience. And again, we had this mindset of, more people means more business, right? Like that would make sense. Well, the thing is, especially in today's market, it's not necessarily the equation that works anymore. So when you're looking at it that way, it can be so frustrating to feel like I kind of had this perspective. If more people know who I am, more people will buy from me. And truthfully, the more people who know from you, the more opportunities you have to build community. And that community is what converts them into your offer. So if you are someone who feels like you have this gap between I have this reach, but I feel like I don't have the response that I want from those people, oftentimes it's actually a community problem. It's not necessarily a content problem. Okay. So the second, kind of in the content bucket, is that your engagement is probably pretty high, but you also feel like your conversations, or frankly, your conversions, are shallow, right? Like everything is very surface level. And this is something that I think for many people from a social perspective is very confusing, because the thought process is, if people are liking this video that I'm putting out, or they're saving this video, or they're sharing it with their friends, why are they not buying from me? Like clearly they resonate with this information. And the reality is that information is not necessarily the equivalent of us being intrigued to want to invest. And so people consume information all the time in a way that they find just valuable, that they think can serve them. But if someone is going to buy from you, oftentimes it's a byproduct of the fact that they don't just want the information of what you're sharing, they want the information connected to you. Okay. So it's not a matter that they want more information. They want the information connected to you. And this is something today more than ever that is essential to make sure that you master, because it is no longer about the fact, okay, well, great. Like I'm teaching what Sarah's teaching. Yes, but Sarah has community and you don't. So it means that when two people have a deciding factor of who they're going to invest from, they're going to invest with the person they have more connection with, i.e., that they feel a deeper sense of community to. So the other indicator that I will say is like crucial to assess is, are other people bringing their friends into your community? And people referring, I will say, is one of the clearest indicators of community. Now, you may have referrals inside of your offer, meaning that you have clients that have been inside of a service, inside of a program, and you say, okay, well, great. Like I'm getting referrals into my offer. Having referrals inside of your offer is fantastic. But what we want to understand is how many people are actually referring people to your audience and to your marketing. So like for me, a clear indicator of my, for example, podcast is not the fact that you're listening to it right now. It's the fact that this is so valuable for you that you decide that you like it so much you want to share it with a friend. And then that person shares with a friend. That is community. You consuming this each week and never telling anyone about it or never sharing it with anybody is not something that is a sign of community. It's a sign of individual consumption and, again, audience. People, again, can have massive podcasts with massive amounts of downloads, but nobody ever talking about them. And that is because, again, it's content, not community. So the same thing happens when it comes to even social. An indicator would be if you put up a post. I had, one of our posts that we had probably about a week ago. And underneath, someone from our community was like, here's a post for you. This is what I was telling you about. Meaning they tagged my post to somebody that they know. And they said, this is what I want you to see. It's what we were talking about earlier. So what I'm now seeing for myself from the comment is that this person has acknowledged they were talking about some topic in another room. 2, that they shared this information with their friend. And I'm not part of this interaction at all. This is them doing this completely on their own. And again, that's a sign of community, meaning that the thing that you're doing is serving someone so intentionally, so strategically, that they share it with other people, and there creates this domino effect of the impact you had on that person to the next person, to the next person, to the next person. And that's when the net of our community really starts to broaden and starts to reach out. The other thing that I also want to have you ask yourself is, are you the only thing that is keeping your community together? Everything that has to happen with your audience has to flow through you. And this is a problem because this is where people get really burnt out when they try to facilitate community, is that they believe they are the community. They are the center and kind of the nucleus of it all. And what actually needs to happen is that in order for your community to take a life of its own, it can't be connected to you. You can lead the charge of it. You can try to guide it. You can try to have a North Star to lead people of where to go. But the question is, if you sat back for a day or even a week or a month or a year, would the community still exist without you? Because if it can't, it means it's completely centered around you, which means if you step back, the community dies. The way that we're going to look, which I'm going to teach you today, is to help your community to have a us mentality versus a you mentality. Okay. So for example, classic example, ambitious. Okay. This is not the Kate Perkovic podcast. And I'll tell you why. This podcast is not about me. Yes, I do share my stories. I do, give analogies. I talk about some clients. Like I'll try to give some insights, of course, of what I'm seeing and doing in my world and how that can help you. But realistically, what I'm actually here to do is I'm here to support you. I'm here to teach you what you need to know to grow and scale your business. I'm here to teach you what you need to know to grow and scale yourself in your relationship, your health, your mindset. And so when we named it ambitious, it was because when you listen to this podcast, this is you deciding that you want to become the most ambitious level of yourself that you possibly could be, and that you want to use this podcast as a tool to help you to fill your toolbox with everything you need to become that version of you that you're looking to become. So this is not the Kate Perkovic podcast because it's not supposed to be about me. It's about you. And so when these podcasts are shared and I see people sharing this with their friends or posting it to their story, and thank you for anybody who ever does that from the bottom of my heart, thank you. This is something that I say is like, okay, great. We're having more women who are becoming their ambitious self. The top ambitious woman in them is basically being unleashed with these different tools. So that's the essence of it, meaning ambitious as an essence of a brand, of a belief, of a mission is not me, right? Our guests, they're not about me. Our topics even today, this is not about me. This is about you. And so when we named it ambitious, we did that intentionally because this was not meant to be about me. It was to create a community of women like yourself who were ready to tap into this identity that they know they have within them. And they wanted a place where they felt like they could feed that identity every single week. And so I want to invite you as well to ask yourself, in your current ecosystem of your brand, of your market, do you have a place where people can tap into an identity that isn't necessarily about you? Does that exist? And if you're like, shoot, I'm going to be honest, I don't think I have that. That's okay, because that's exactly what we're going to be teaching you today. So I want to kind of like first quickly myth bust and remove from your brain before we teach you how to do it what community is not, okay? Because a lot of people are getting community wrong, and it's part of why someone can spend years and years and years with the mindset that they're going to like, oh, I'm going to build community. And they look up and they feel like nothing has been developed. And that's because you probably have a very outdated perspective potentially of what community actually is. So first of all, community is not a big following. If I could see you in person, I would hold you by the shoulders and tell you this. You do not need a bigger following to have more community, okay? And I've seen this. I have the absolute pleasure of working with clients in all different sizes of audiences. I have people who have, 2,000 or even sometimes 200 followers. And I have some people that I've worked with who have upwards toward, 500,000, 700,000 followers on their accounts. And even from peers that I know who have audiences up to 1 million. I was literally seeing someone in a conversation the other day who has an audience of 1.2 million followers. And their number one thing is no one's moving, no one's buying. I have no buy-in from my people. And this was a clear indicator that audience alone is not enough. So I first want you to recognize that if you are somebody who has a big following, I want you to also remember that a big following is an audience that watches you, okay? A community is a collective group of people who move because you're leading them of where you want them to go, okay? So if you have potentially for yourself 700 people following you, 7,000 people following you, the thing you want to keep in mind is, are these people watching me or are they moving when I hope to lead them or invite them to move? And again, key indication of whether we have audience or whether we have actual true community. So I want you to first release this idea that you need more people in order for your community to be more active, to feel more alive, to feel more engaged. You don't need more people, number one. Number two, it is not about engagement. Okay. This is not about more likes. It's not about more follows. It's not about more saves, more shares. The thing that I will say is kind of a misinterpretation of engagement is that we believe, again, that like when someone engages with us, like, oh my God, they like us. Like it's this weird validation loop of we put out a piece of content and we feel like if people are engaging with it, then that means they like it. And if they like it, that means they're going to buy from me. Like there's this belief that like, okay, great. Like we joke even sometimes when we put up marketing, like our team will be like, they like us. They really like us, you know? And it's this joke because it's this idea that engagement equals connection, right? But real community has the impact of having conversations that you did not start. It really takes a life of its own. And engagement, I would say, is really like you putting out an invitation and someone responding. I want to see, can people activate conversations and connection and sharing and posting about you and your brand without you necessarily facilitating that yourself? And so that's something that I look at to say, okay, is it engagement or are they actively engaged in supporting you and your mission and your beliefs when you're not even doing something to ask them to engage with? Okay. So also understanding customer base is not an indication of community. Many of us believe with businesses, and we're going to talk about revenue because community is very influential in revenue. But with revenue, just also having customers, i.e., having sales, is not an indication that you have good community. So if you have lots of low ticket sales, you may even have a lot of high ticket sales. That does not mean that you have community. And I'm going to tell you a little story because this was actually something that really solidified my perspective when it comes to community. There's a brand online. And I'm not going to name names, okay? So we're not spilling that much tea today. But there's a brand online that has a really good, decent sized community. Okay. So, like, we're talking in like the hundreds of thousands in size, lots of engagement, lots of saves, lots of shares. And one of the things that was really interesting is that this person, their entire brand and community is basically them. Like, it was interesting because I had someone who brought them up to me in passing on a call. And so this brand, I was like, okay, well, why don't we just do an audit of what it is that your questions are? So I literally remember I took AI and I had AI review based on an aspect of community because my hunch was this person doesn't have community because they had engagement, they had people sharing and saving, they had people commenting, but there was this sense of the fact that the entire thing was so self-absorbed. Like it was so selfish. It wasn't about the people, it was about the person. And I don't know if you've ever followed someone like that where you're like, I feel like what they teach is valuable. I feel like what they discuss or what they share, like it is insightful, it is helpful, but you kind of secretly know that the entire time that everything that they're doing, it's all self-serving. It's all designed to help you to buy from them or to show how cool they are or to show their accolades. Like it's all like me content. And it kind of makes you feel like this is not really for me. Like they're not doing this to pour into me. They're doing it because it's like a transaction, basically, that they're just trying to make it seem like it's valuable, but it's secretly connected to some back end flow that they're trying to put me through. And so this person said to me on a call, they said, I'm I see this person online and they said, I feel like it's so frustrating because they have such good engagement. And I feel like they just must have this ride or die community. And I said, what makes you think they have a ride or die community? And they said the same thing, like, oh, well, they get lots of sales. So I said, yes, but sales don't mean that someone has community. Sales means that someone has the ability to market and to sell. It doesn't mean that they have a repeated customer base. So I want you for a second right now to ask yourself, what is a brand that you've invested with recently? So like even for me, I have like a routine every morning. I get ready. I go to the coffee shop at the corner near my house and I go and I get the same coffee, my usual every single day, honey oat latte. And the server knows like your usual. I'm like, yes. And I get my coffee and I go same place every day. I don't go there because they're the only people who have coffee. I go there because there's a connection there. There's a community there. I know the baristas at that corner. I know who the faces are I'm going to be walking in to see each day. There's an aspect of connection there, not just coffee. So, what I had explained to this client who mentioned this online brand to me, and that I had been kind of seeing lead in this way for a while now, I said to them, you have to recognize that what they're banking on is that they're banking on everyone having a first time coffee with them every single day. So, like, think of the hustle that is, oh my God, I have to get first time coffee people in here because they're probably never going to come back versus the person who has community, who has not only repeat customers, but they're like, hey, friend, meet me at the corner for a coffee today because you got to go to this coffee shop. I love it there. Or why don't we all go for coffee on Sunday? I go to this coffee shop. They're bringing their friends, they're meeting people there, they're repeat customers, they're telling other people to go there even when they're not going for coffee. That same feeling can be your brand. And the reason I mentioned this other company is because this person, seemingly to the outside eye, has a lot of customers. People see that they have lots of sales. But the thing that most people don't see is a lot of their sales are one time sales, meaning the fact that people come and they go and they never return. They don't renew. They don't tell their friends. They don't share with others, oh my gosh, you've got to be in here. They go in, they get what they were promised, and they leave. And that is because it's rooted in transaction. It was never about the audience or about the community in the first place. It was about the facilitator. It was about the owner. It was about the brand. And so as a result, when someone goes in, they realize this place is not for me. They're not here to serve me and make sure I have a good time and that I enjoy myself and that it's tailored to my experience. They're here to make sure that they get their sale, they get their money, and they fulfill their contract. And I'm telling you, your audience can feel a difference as to which one you are. So I want you to recognize that having more sales does not necessarily mean that you have more community. It could just mean that you're better at a transaction, which is a very short-lived cycle, versus those who have community that's more long-term. And lastly, community is not about having a group of people who literally agree with everything that you say. Okay, so this is not just like an echo chamber, a huge group of cheerleaders who just reiterate everything that you do and say. Real communities, true communities, can have disagreements. They can have different perspectives. They can have curiosities and inquiries without the whole thing itself falling apart. And that's also something I think many of us get wrong, is that if you're part of a community, you have to see and do everything the way that I see and do it. And I don't actually know that that's the case when it comes to true community. So when you're looking at your own community, okay? So I want you to just picture right now your audience, wherever that may be. This may be even inside your program or inside of your service, but it also could be on a larger scale with your brand. So it could be in your marketing, it could be content, it could even be an email list, a blog, a Substack, a podcast. So just take a second here to think about maybe two different platforms, two different places that you really want to focus on creating community. And with this, I want you to take this next little section here and ask yourself if you're doing any of these things, because these are going to be ways to audit yourself and your current approach to say, am I doing that? And if so, there are things we want to be aware of so we can adjust them with the 7 Ps we're going to dive into today. So the first one that I tell everybody when it comes to community, it's a very easy thing to audit. It's a very easy thing to assess, is that I want you to ask yourself if you are giving a sense of belonging within your audience, or are you actually just broadcasting to a large group of people? Okay. So are you broadcasting to people or are you giving them a sense of belonging? One of the biggest mistakes that people make is that they look to be admired within their brand. They don't actually look to connect. And when you broadcast, I want you to literally think about this. I hope if you're watching, you'll be able to see my hands going here. Okay. So if you're a broadcaster, I literally want you to think you have your audience here and you're literally like a megaphone just yelling at them, right? So it's like this one-sided message, this one-sided tone. That's a broadcast brand. A broadcast brand is the person who just is yelling at their audience, telling them what to do. There's no two-sided conversation. So, a really true community brand is the person who has dialogue. Okay. There's this communication back and forth. It's not just, I say this to you, you take that, and I'll see you next week. It's about asking for feedback. It's about asking people to engage. It's about getting people to open up to you, to share with you, to have a dialogue, a sense that they are part of this picture. They are part of this structure, that they're ingrained in it, not that you're at the top and that you're relaying this information to them. They need to consume it and you'll see them next time. That broadcasting is the thing that's actually keeping your audience from feeling any sense of actual true belonging with you and your community. The other thing that I want you to ask yourself is, are you actually measuring the wrong thing? So you're looking at follower count, you're looking at reach, you're looking at, impressions. And again, as we've seen, audience is not the same as community. So I want you to ask yourself, how do you, without followers, reach, or impressions, how, if I asked you right now, would you measure your community without those metrics? Okay. So think about this. The word I want you to think of is depth. Okay. Connection or depth. So if I asked you to tell me the level of community that you have on a scale of 1 to 10 right now, regardless of your followers, your reach, or your impressions inside of your given audience, what score would you give yourself and why? Just take like 30 seconds to ask yourself, what would be my score? 1 to 10 of my community. Let's just say you land on a 6 or you land on a 3. And again, there's no right or wrong here. This is just a little check-in tool for us. When you audit that for yourself, what made you say that number? So just take 30 seconds. Where in the scale of 1 to 10 is your community at? And when you say that number, what makes you say that number? How do you quantify community in your mind? If it's not about the size or just simply the engagement. Okay. So I want you to keep that in the back of your mind because we're going to be coming back to this, okay? You also want to make sure that you have not outsourced community building, okay? So I have been in this space for a while now, and I have seen a lot of people who are like, I need a community manager. I need a community manager. And they want to delegate building of community. And what you want to recognize is that delegating your building of community is only actually possible or successful if you know what your community is in the first place. So when people look to say, I want to delegate building community, or I want to hire someone to manage my community or to help me to build it in general, that's great. But the thing we want to recognize is that having someone build your community is good, but what are they building? Meaning, what are the actual pieces or ingredients that that person is doing or executing that's helping you to build community in the first place? If you don't know what those things are, how can that person actually facilitate the building of your community? So a core mistake I see a lot of people make is that they try to delegate a job. Like they think, okay, well, I've got a social media manager or I have a sales, DM setter. I'm going to have this person whose job it is to build my community. Yes, but just like those other positions, they need ingredients from which to build community. It's not just engagement. So if you don't have that clarity, it is actually not something that you should be delegating yet. It's something that you need to figure out the ingredients of so you can properly give it to someone to help them to manage. This is a key one that is really, I would say, if I was going to make any mistake, the number one, it would be this one, which is that you are only showing up for your community when there's something in it for you. And This is kind of back to that example I gave of like what I can only label as like a selfish brand or a self-serving brand, which is why there's no community. Community can't be something that is completely self-serving and therefore only something that you do when there's something in it for you. Building community is not like, oh, well, I want to launch this offer, so now I'm going to care about my people. Building community is not a matter of, oh, well, I'm going to try to push this product soon, so now I'm going to actually get into my DMs. Or, oh, I'm going to go do this thing in my business, i.e., I have this outcome. So now I care about my community because if I care about them, it'll eventually come back to me in the next 2-3 weeks for my outcome I want. It is one of the most unethical and also like non-impactful, non-strategic ways to actually build a business. You're making something so much harder than it needs to be. Whereas if you actually focused on building community, regardless of what you're selling, regardless of what you're promoting, regardless of the launches you have coming up, those launches and promotions would do 10 times better because you're not treating your people like a transaction. If you are someone who only shows up for your people when you have something that you personally need from them, do not kid yourself. Your audience notices. They notice that you do not pay attention to them. You do not pour into them. You do not engage with them unless you need something from them. And that's kind of to my point earlier when I had said, that example of that brand. Every single person that I know who knows this brand fully acknowledges that they only engage with their audience to the level of need that they have. If they don't need something, they disappear. And if they do need something, they're really doubling down and getting in there with people. It's like the more in it they are with their community, the more clarity we have that there's some kind of offer coming, which is not how it should be. And you're not going to want to make that mistake. So, what you want to recognize is that the quiet seasons, okay, the seasons where you're not promoting something, the seasons where you're not selling something, when you're not in a launch, those are actually the most important times for you to nurture community because it's the moments when you're not selling anything, the moments when you're not promoting, the moments when you don't have a call to action. Those are the moments that make people go, wow, this is really something that I want to be part of. I can't wait till something comes out again. I can't wait till they launch something. So make sure that if you want to see spikes of sales, you are really taking intentional time to look at those seasons in between and say, am I pouring as much into my community in the seasons where I'm not promoting as the seasons that I have something coming up? Now, for any of my people scaling, our last one we want to remember here is if you are scaling, I want you to recognize that scale can actually have you scaling out your community. And what I mean by that is if you are someone who wants to scale your community rapidly, sometimes without, again, understanding what the community is based around, meaning like, what are the core ingredients that allow it to work? What are the pieces that allow it to be as engaged as it is? If you don't know what that is, you can actually, by accident, in trying to grow it, remove the intimacy, the actual piece that allowed it to be successful in the first place. So you have to make sure that as you scale audience, you are also protecting the culture at every stage. So I'll give you an example. Remember we were talking about having community managers, right? Or even potentially that, someone will say, I want someone to answer all my DMs, or I want someone to answer all my comments. I want them to reply to all my emails. I want them to do everything. That's fine. I'm a big fan of delegation. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you have to do everything on your own. But I think one of the things that's important is that you ask yourself, in delegating everything, how do you plan to protect the culture? And this is something that even small businesses have to ask, but large businesses also have to ask. One of the core ones that many of us will know is like Starbucks, right? Starbucks had, a more like intimate coffee shop. They had like fireplaces. They had these like big cozy chairs they used to have in their locations. It was like really that like classic, like the Friends almost cafe. Like it was like this Friends cafe vibe. And it was really cozy and you felt like you wanted to be there. There was a certain culture associated with going to Starbucks. That is not the culture anymore. They have wooden chairs that are beyond uncomfortable. They have the same setup in every single place and they lost that culture. It went mainstream and it went, frankly, more mass market. And so as a result, that kind of cozy coffee shop culture that they used to have is not actually the culture that they have anymore. They're more of a McDonald's type of level of production with a different wrapping paper on it. And that is because as they scaled, they removed those culture elements to try to have scale faster and faster and faster, having more locations and, having frankly just more exposure. They actually lost what was kind of a little bit part of the community in the first place. And so you want to recognize that sometimes when you go bigger, if you don't know what those core things are. So let's just say, Starbucks, I remember as a kid, I used to go to what we had here, which called like Chapters. It's like a big bookstore, and they'd have a Starbucks that would be inside of the bookstore. And it was always this like cozy, like dark lighting, again, big comfy chairs. Sometimes they had a fireplace in it. Like it was really a cozy vibe back then when I was a kid. And I remember, it being something that I really looked forward to. And if they had kept these core ingredients, meaning, okay, we need it to always be dark inside, we need it to be, jazz playing in the background, every location has a fireplace and some cozy chairs. There are certain things from an aesthetic experience, from a more transaction user experience, from a culture aspect. There's a piece in all these aspects that if they had protected them, they could have actually scaled that. But because they were scaling and they prioritized scale over culture, it means that they actually diminished the culture that once used to exist to prioritize scale instead. So the best success for any business or brand is when you can scale while still protecting culture. And if you can do those two things, you will have people who loved what you did in the beginning love it just as much at the end because you protected the ingredients that they loved when you did it at scale. So, we know that there's a lot of misconceptions about community versus audience, right? We know that there's some kind of core mistakes that many people, maybe even yourself, are making right now when it comes to community. And also with this, things we need to be aware of and ask ourselves about maybe the way that you're building community right now. So the big question all of us have is, well, how do I build community then? And so I'm going to teach you the 7 Ps of how to build community. So this is something I will say, I always believe in giving credit where credit is due. I have what is not to be confused with my P framework. I have a 5 Ps framework that I have taught you before on this podcast. But today we're going to be diving into the 7 Ps of community. These are the 7 core ingredients that you need to have if you want to make sure that you actually have a ride or die community and not just an audience of people who follow you and follow your stuff. So the first of the 7 Ps to building community is purpose. So if you want to think, I want you to think about these 7. If you can just memorize the 7, you'll have a great framework from which to operate off. And again, to give credit where credit is due, this is actually a framework from David Spinks. He is the author of the book called The Business of Becoming, where he literally talks all about the significance of community and how to effectively do that. So the 7 Ps of community by David Spinks, one of the 7 that he mentions is purpose. So why does your community need to exist? Okay, so I'm going to ask you some questions with these. Why does your community need to exist? Not because it's a niche, not because of your offer, but like the true deep reason why people are gathering. So David notes that if you cannot answer this specific thing, what specific problem does this community solve for the people in it? If you can't answer that, then you don't have a community yet. You just have a content channel. So when we think about what specific problem does this community solve for the people in it, I'm going to give you an example of ambitious to kind of break the fourth wall, if you will, and also provide an example so you can think about what this might look like for you or kind of just add some context or color to what we're talking about. So for ambitious, the reason I started ambitious, as I said earlier, is I didn't want it to be the Kate Perkovic show. That was something I was very clear about from the beginning. The reason I feel like I created it is because I felt like I myself have learned from a lot of incredible male mentors. I've worked with a lot of incredible men in business, and they're very, very wicked smart and just so knowledgeable. But I felt like a lot of the time I was trying to tailor it and like adapt it almost to me as a woman. And it felt yeah, it always just felt like it needed to go through a filter before it could truly feel mine. And I wanted to find a place where I could talk about things, share information that I really loved, and strategy that I felt like has been so influential for me, but also do it in a way that I feel like I didn't have to add some filter to it to make it mine. And so that was number one. Number two, I recognized that, when I was building my business, I was listening to the likes of like Tony Robbins, Gary Vee, Ed Milet. I've been listening and watching these male mentors online. And I thought, well, like, where's the go to space for women? And I wanted there to be a space where women could kind of tap into their vision of what they wanted to create, like to tap into the fact they wanted to be a badass business owner and they wanted to, scale a business and they wanted to go for ambitious things in every bucket. And this was the other part I learned is like, I'm a real, like, I would say like pusher. So I liked to be like, okay, cool. Like, how can I push myself physically? How can I push myself mentally? How can I push myself to have like the top relationship, the top understanding of myself? And I recognized ambitious was not just in my business. It was like this identity that I wanted to adapt in every bucket of my life. And I wanted to create that space for the old me, such as yourself, even if you're like, one step behind me, or maybe you're listening to this right now, you're an aspiring entrepreneur, you're scaling your business right now, you're in the growth phase. I wanted to be a place where like that people could learn that. And I also recognized, and you've heard me talk about this before, that less than 2% of female founded businesses hit seven figures. And so what I recognized was like, there's a lot. And listen, I don't have any shade to the boys. Like there's a lot of men in business who are very smart and I respect very deeply. But I also thought there needs to be a place where women can tap into that masculine energy that they have in business and not feel shame around it, but also be able to connect with other women at the same time. And so I thought, what better thing to do when I'm craving that space than to literally be the host of that party? And so the purpose of what it solves is allowing women a space to, as online businesses, feel like they have a place to come back to, that they feel like they can come here to learn about themselves, their relationship, their business, their brand, their finances, their mindset, their health. Like that if you are someone who wants to go for big, ambitious things in any bucket of your life, that you see ambitious as a resource to do that. And if that's how you feel, as I hope it's how you feel, because it's how I felt in creating this, that was truly the first P, which was the purpose of why I created it. It was not about, well, like this is our, funnel to this content and to that content. It wasn't about that. It was about what's the bigger thing that we want to have this be a tool for our people. And that was basically how it was created. So ask yourself, number one, for the first of the seven Ps, what is the purpose of your audience? So like what specific problem does your community exist for, and look to solve for the people inside of it? And again, not about a niche, not about your offer. This is about for the people, okay? The second, which will be easy to remember now, of the seven Ps is people. So the first we have is your purpose. The second we have is people. So who is this for? Who is this community specifically for? And also, most importantly, who is your community not for? So, for example, the specificity of the person you want to connect with is what makes people want to belong. So I usually know when someone's listening to Ambitious, there's a couple things I probably know about you. Number one, you probably listen to podcasts pretty consistently to develop yourself and to grow and to expand, as I said, into that next level of the person you want to become. I would hazard to guess that you probably are somebody who is starting a business, or maybe you're looking to grow or to scale a business right now. I would also say that if you resonate at all with what is discussed inside of Ambitious, that you also have just really good values. You have ethics in the way that you operate. You have integrity. You are very driven and you want to move fast, but you also are not the kind of person who needs to step on other people to make that happen. And you want to play fair. And you also, in playing fair, still very much want to win. And so what I know about the women who listen to this is that many are, in some regard, a personal brand or a service-based business and have those values, have those kind of core ingredients in the way that they operate. And the second P of people is important because Loyal communities are so granular and specific about who their audience is really for. And I think that this is like probably one of the most important things for you to have clarity on when it comes to your community is to say who really is the true person that you want to connect with. And I'm going to get to this there's another P in the 7 Ps that I think is also going to reiterate this and kind of reinforce it for you. But there's also the aspect of who's this for, but who is it not? I think that is like, for me, always been the easiest way to define really who my stuff is for. And it's not a matter of just listing out the qualities of like yourself, but it's saying, if I had like the perfect person listen to this, who's like the complete opposite of them that I really don't think this is for, or that I don't want to create this community around. And many that I ask when I do brand exercises with people, many people have clarity of who they're not for, sometimes even more specifically or more intentionally than who it is for, right? Like it's like, oh, who's this not for? It's not for this person, that person, that person. And you'll see them start to like list things out. That's because they have such crystal clarity of like, I don't want these people here. That's not who this is intended for. That might come to you quicker. And if it does, that's totally okay. It's going to, by the inverse, tell you who your community is for. So that's the second of the 7 Ps. The third of the 7 Ps is a place, okay? So where do these people gather? And does that place serve the purpose? Your people need a place that feels like theirs, not just something that you whipped together because it was easy. I also want to say that the wrong platform can also kill a community. So what you want to ask yourself with the platform piece of it, or the place, is that the place where they gather needs to be something that they themselves enjoy coming to. It's not something that you just say, hey, I'm deciding that you gather here. Okay. So it's something where the end person is being kept in mind when you are creating different resources, when you are creating different supports for them or different places for them to connect. It needs to be something that keeps the end person in mind. So ask yourself, with your community, where are the places that these people gather? And it's not just about, oh, well, like they gather on Instagram. It's to say, okay, great, but like where else are they connecting with each other, or are they connecting with each other anywhere else? Now, the next we're going to be getting into, so remember to summarize until now, we've got purpose, we've got people, the place they gather, and now we're on to number 4, which is participation. What do members do inside of your community? You need to give people reasons to show up for the community. And I'm going to kind of break the fourth wall in a couple different ways that we do this. So with Ambitious, there's a couple different things that we do. We ask to engage with you. You probably have heard me on past episodes say, hey, if anything landed for you today, if you have any questions, if you have something even just you want to share, something you're working on, slide into my DMs. I'd love to connect with you. That basically says, hey, like, raise your hand. Tell me you're here. Like, would love to hear from you. Tell me what you're working on. Tell me a clarity piece that's coming up for you. I'd love to connect. There's an open door for connection. 2, the other thing that we also do is that we have a submit a question feature, both on our website as well as typically in our show notes as well, where you can actually submit a question to have your question asked and answered on one of our Q&A hot seat episodes. So if you want to submit a question, you can also engage with us. We have a leave a review link on our website for the podcast. So you can also tell us your feedback. What are you liking about the podcast? What are you not liking about the podcast? Anything or thoughts that you have around, why you listen, or maybe some of your favorite episodes, what you love about it, etc. So you're getting the ability for that person to engage. We also have our Ambitious Network, which we had full transparency. We started at the beginning, and I kind of at that time, because I had so many people said, hey, I want to connect, I created the Ambitious Network. And now I'm like, okay, great. Like, I know exactly what I want this to look like. I want to, we have really cool episodes that are coming out actually with a new structure, which I'm excited to release, that are actually going to be hot seat coaching of you and of your business. So if you want updates on that, stay tuned inside the Ambitious Network. But we're doing, book giveaways in there, and we're doing incredible things to get participation of our audience to say, hey, if you want to win a book from today's guest, comment the word below and we will send you a copy of their book. So It's things that we do to be able to connect with you. That's really all it comes down to. It's just to say, like, let's connect. And again, let's contrast this on the other side of maybe another podcast that you listen to where you've never talked to the host. You have never been able to ask a question. You've never been able to submit a topic. You've never been able to engage with other members. You've never been able to get access to resources. You feel like nothing's happened. Like there's been nothing technically that has come from that. If that's the case, that's content. Okay. It's not to say it's bad. It's content. That's not community. And we need to make sure that we're not confusing content with community. Community means, remember before when we kind of rewind and we zoom back, community is a byproduct of a conversation with your people, not a broadcast where it's just me yapping into your ear each week and your thoughts, your questions, your concerns, your comments are not considered. If I just came every week and said, great, well, here's some info, hope that helps, and there was no opportunity for you to give feedback, for you to add your 2 cents in, to inquire or to connect with me, it would feel very shallow because it is. It would be literally just content. There would be no community to it. And that was something I knew I didn't want this podcast to be. So participation is a crucial part of having an active community. Are you allowing or inviting people to come back with conversation to you, or are you just broadcasting at your audience? Now, this is the one that I mentioned earlier when we were saying who's your audience for and who's it not for. Part of who it's not for is also going to be this next P, which is called policy. Policy basically means that we need to have rules of both things that are spoken but also unspoken when it comes to how people are behaving inside of your audience. And so this is really your culture, truthfully, in like written form in detail. Strong communities, some of the most powerful communities, are people who really intentionally protect their rooms. You need to define inside of your community what is acceptable and what is not. And this is something that needs to remain consistent, and typically that needs to be reinforced consistently. So here's the thing. Remember how before I was saying, who's this podcast for? It's for a heart-centered person. It's for somebody who has incredible values, who's very driven, who doesn't need to step on others in order to be able to win or to succeed. One of the things that you probably can tell from the way that I talk about business or the way that I talk about any of these buckets is that I myself hold those values in the way that I operate in business, the way that I treat others, the way that I lead my life. And so what I ask is the same of those in my community. I hold the people in my circle to a high level of ethics, values, standards, and I don't really have tolerance for the putting down of others, the manipulation of others. I genuinely believe to my core, as I know many of you who are listening right now do as well, you are someone who, as I said, still wants to win the game. You're just not the person who's going to be cheating to make that happen. In your mind, you're like, if I win this game, I'm winning fair and square. And it's because I worked my butt off. I did what it took. I put in the training. I put in the hours. And that's why I'm here. And I am all for the confidence. I am all for all of that. Again, as long as it never means that we're doing it in an unethical, no values based way. And so what it means is if you are somebody who's one of those people, this podcast is not going to resonate with you because you're going to be like, well, I do want to cheat. And what is the shortcut? And I do want to be able to step on people. If that's something that's the way you operate business, you will not resonate with anything that I put out. And I'm so entirely okay with that. I could not care less if my stuff doesn't resonate with you. And that is because you're not for this community. And the thing that I know, and I've seen from the incredible women who message me from this podcast, is that they also share with me what they're seeing. They share with me the things that they see in the industry that are unethical, that they feel are like unaligned when it comes to values, that they feel like are unfair, or the experiences that they've had. And we have this like really core value of transparency and openness and connection and sharing that comes with these episodes. And so I think it's really important that you recognize that there has to be policies inside your community. You can't be for everybody. And in picking who you are for, you have to ask yourself, in order to be part of that community, what are the rules of what it means to sit with us? What are the rules of what it means to be part of this? And those rules are actually going to be the bumper lanes to help to protect the people inside and protect the room, but also to keep out the people who aren't in alignment with that brand or community. Now, something that's going to help your community to take a life of its own and that will literally allow it to bloom into something beautiful and incredible is another of the 7 Ps, which is promotion. Meaning, are your members inviting other members to be part of your community? So if people are not bringing other people into your community has not given them enough yet to be proud of. And this is for us part of, I would say my biggest like success metric, if I think about community for my offer, it's, obviously referrals, bringing in people who say, hey, I had such a great experience in this that I told 5 of my friends and I want them to join now. And I sent so-and-so your way. It's one of the biggest compliments that I could ever receive in coaching. But it's also something that's a huge compliment to me with this podcast. When people share, hey, I'm listening to today's episode on their story, or I loved this episode, like that's you taking time out of your day to share this podcast with people that are inside your audience. When I've, had people say, hey, so-and-so sent me your episode about ABC, it's one of the biggest compliments that I could literally ever ask for. And that's because people are taking, again, time out of their day to share our podcast with people in their world. So what that is to me is like, it's the easiest symbol of true community. Because it would be so easy for me to say, like, you should listen to this. But at the end of the day, it's not just, oh, you should listen to this. It's like people telling their friends who tell their friends who tell their friends that they should listen to this. That's really the domino effect of where community happens, is when you, the person who are leading it, are not the only person who's promoting it. You also have the people who are in it promoting it as well. And the last of the 7 Ps is performance. Okay. So how do we measure whether our audience and our community are actually working, and not based off of like superficial metrics, but true metrics, meaning like, are people staying? So like I had a message from somebody, she's incredible. So she messaged me and she said, hey, Kate, I'm going to be really honest with you. I think I've listened to every single ambitious episode that's ever been put out. And I was like, 100? Like 100 hours of me? And she was like, yeah, I love the conversations. And I said to her, oh my God, well, first of all, thank you. And second of all, what do you want to hear? What are episodes that would help you? Where are you at right now? Like, what can we record to support you? Like, give me the 101. And it was incredible because I basically looked for myself to say, okay, it's not about just total downloads. It's a matter for me of like how many people are feeling excited for Thursdays when a new episode comes out. That to me is something that I would actually say is the true metric of success. Because what that means is it's not about the podcast, but the fact that whatever we're talking about is actually valuable enough for you that you want to come back and spend time, which to me means that we're doing something right because it is serving you in some way. So that for me is a really clear metric of success. So are they referring people? Are people staying in your world, in your ecosystem? Are they active? And I think it's important because when we don't measure performance, we kind of can't, like we were saying earlier, really define, is our community on a scale of 1 to 10? Remember when I asked you that? Scale of 1 to 10, what did you grade yourself? And when you graded yourself, whatever number you gave, why did you give yourself that number? When I said, what's your level of community on a 1 to 10, if it couldn't be for followers, reach, or visibility? And let's just say you were at a 6. I want you to ask yourself, what did the 6 mean? What was the 6 defined by? What was the metrics of what made you decide 6? And that's important because you want to know that a busy community and a healthy community are 2 very different things. So I know people who have millions and millions and millions of podcast downloads, but they have no community. And this kind of goes back to Instagram. It goes back to email lists. You can have tons of people on the email list, but no one who opens them. You can have a huge Instagram or a TikTok audience, but no community within it. You can have lots of people who download your podcast, but none of which who ever engage, never share it with their friends, never do anything with the information. And so it's important that when we gauge performance of our community, we're also reflecting on what do we define as success when we're saying it is or is not successful. Okay. So I want to just kind of reiterate to zoom back to these 7 Ps. So again, to give credit where credit is due to this incredible framework, David Spinks, who is the author of The Business of Becoming, these are the 7 Ps of community, which are purpose, people, place, participation, policy, promotion, and performance. Okay. So today we talked all things community and what that looks like in, against, and beside audience. And so if your audience disappeared from social media tomorrow, one of the questions I want to leave you with is how many of the people that are in your current social media audience or current marketing audience, wherever that may be hosted, how many of them would still find a way to connect with you if you disappeared tomorrow? That number is your true community size. That's your true community, is how many people would search for you in the event that you disappeared online tomorrow. And I want you to ask, in the last 90 days of what you've put out on the internet, how much of that was designed to simply impress people, to, get clicks, to get engagement, and how much of that was truly designed with intention or in the nature of getting people to connect. And so I ask this because this is really where we get to do the work as online businesses to differentiate ourselves. And I'm going to be very honest with you. It has literally never been easier. It's never been easier to do this. And that is because there are people who are not caring at all about this and not integrating it. And they also are going to be the businesses that dissolve in the next 5 years on their own without trying. This is something that if you focus on building these 7 Ps inside of your community, I can guarantee you in the next 6 to 12 months, you are going to feel a massive shift. And I'm not asking you to double the size of your audience. I'm not asking you to double your engagement. I'm not asking you to adjust these vanity metrics. I'm asking you to actually start to ask, do I have the ingredients that my people need to be part of this community for the long haul? And if you haven't, my hope and my intention for you is by listening today that you'll take even just 1 or 2 of these 7 Ps and start to get clarity on them, start to integrate them, and make them a priority for the next quarter of your business. So as always, if you're listening today and you're like, what would this P look like for me? Or I have a question around this, or, I'm trying to gauge my defined success of my community. As always, my DMs are always open. If you have any questions, comments, things you want to share, maybe even honestly just a reflection in listening to today's episode, my DMs are always open for you. With that being said, we are also going to be posting in connection to today's episode because it was a pretty intense hour of questions and reflections. We're also going to be having a download inside of the Ambitious Network. So if you are someone who's listening today and you're like, I really want to see a document of these 7 Ps, here I am with my own framework still stuck in my brain. If you are somebody who wants this framework of the 7 Ps, we are also going to have a download that is associated with this episode. So how you get that is going to be inside of our Ambitious Network. If you're already in there, you can head to the resources portal that will have all of this for you. It'll be organized by the episode title, so it's super easy to find. But also, if you're somebody who feels like you've never been inside the Ambitious Network before and you also want to get inside, there's 2 ways to join. There's a link underneath in the show notes of this episode where you can join our network, as well as if you want to just shoot me a message on Instagram, I can also send you the link directly. This is a place where you can get giveaways, resources. That I love to cover a lot of really meaty topics. And sometimes, like myself, when I listen to a podcast, I'm on a walk, I'm on the treadmill, I'm in the car, and I can't quite take notes, but I really want to come back to it. And so this is a really great way for you to feel like you get an initial experience of this framework, and you can go dive into it deeper if you want to at a later date with the download inside. So join us inside of the network if you want to dive into this even deeper. With that being said, we will see you on next week's episode. And as always, stay ambitious.